Hello, welcome to the Best of Brighton. I'm Mike Tilt with my guest Carl Vagnetti. We're doing another segment of Table for Two. Today, Carl's going to take us down memory lane and tell us all about the storefronts that were here when he was here back in the 70s. Take it away, Carl.
Well, Mike, thanks for having me again today. It's great to be back with you. I've been sitting here in the original Cardona's building, which is now, of course, the Stout Restaurant. And I was, as I'm looking out the front window, I'm thinking, geez, how Brighton has evolved over the years, and the things that are different now and the things that are still the same. And as I look across the street, I remember that Champ's Pub. It's been a pub for as long as I can remember. I think it was a pub back in the 50s, or a bar. And at that time, back in the 70s, when we first came to Brighton, it was the Marine Bar, Harold Showerman's Marine Bar. And next door to that was the Brian Lavin Law Office, and which is still a law office today. But next to that, the Youthology building now, at way back when, was Pope's Party Store. And that was the original party store downtown, basically the only party store, I believe, at that time. There was a Five and Dime around the corner down by the mill pond. But then past that was there was a trophy store, and I'm trying to think of what it was way back when. And some of you might know that. We're still putting the pieces together. But of course, where the Jameson's is currently, that was Country Squire. You could go in there and buy lamps and chandeliers and parts for lamps and that sort of thing. And then on the corner was Howelltown and Country Real Estate. And if you came across the street on our side of the street, some of you may remember the Brass Lantern. It was a little ma and pa restaurant. They had great meatloaf and just family dining. It was a cute little place. It's now Rotterman's Jewelry. Next to the Brass Lantern, that building always seemed to have a lot of evolution. There were a lot of come and go places. I think there was a flower shop there at one time. But many of you coming to Dino's or Cardona's at the time will remember there was a pinball arcade there. And I'm trying to remember the name of that. So we're going to put it out to you folks, anybody seeing this. If you remember the name of the pinball arcade, you're going to be the winner of the day. Because we know there was an arcade there. Next to that, there was a little gift shop. Below the gift shop, there was in the basement, there was actually a staircase that went down to the lower level, and that was a barber shop for many, many years. And then, of course, right next door to Cardona's was Farrell's Saloon, which back in the 70s, they just had beer and wine. And it was a little rough, a little seedy. There was a pool table, and, not much more. There was a long bar, and actually I had part of that bar in my basement for a long time. Wow. When we actually bought the license, the beer wine license, and upgraded it to liquor, I took a piece of that bar home with me, and I had it in my house for many, many years. But that kind of takes you down Grand River. Of course, next door to Cardona's on the other side, where I believe there's a mortgage company now.
Right.
That building's seen extensive renovation, and it was the Shell gas station, a little two-pump gas station with a two-bay service area, right. And it was a little gas station at the time. So
remember? Well,
yeah,
like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And we're talking what, early 70s or middle 70s?
Yeah, both actually. I think the Shell gas station was there probably up close to 1980, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, they were there.
I remember well coming in here and knowing that there was just a small little path that you could go through, walk through between the gas station in Cardonas.
Yeah,
Very narrow.
yeah, those buildings,
They almost touched.
the ground never saw the light of day because
Okay.
it was always shaded. Those two buildings were probably 3 to 4 feet apart. Back in the day, this building was fueled by fuel oil. We had a fuel oil furnace, and there were two 250-gallon tanks, and they were between those two buildings. So it was tight over there. Yeah, I remember Corrigan Oil was delivering fuel to us from those years back then.
Wow. Yeah, Corgans have been around for a while now.
Oh yeah.
I remember going to school with Tim and Mike. And yeah, they've done real well for themselves in this town, and nicest family you could ever meet. Real
Yeah.
nice people. So Carl's got an article here that he's brought us, and would like to share that with you.
Well, Mike has been bugging me to find pictures of the old days and the archives and whatnot, and I was able to find in my little scrapbook a newspaper article which is dated January 25th, 1978, and we were fortunate enough to make the front page of the Brighton Argus and voted the #1 pizza in Livingston County at that time. And they did a nice article, and there I am in the picture spinning a pizza, and it was kind of neat. It was fun, but I have to give credit where credit is due. The gentleman that made the pizza that became the #1 pizza, his name was Jeff Bertoya. And for those of you that remember Jeff worked for me for a good while, probably close to 5 years, at least through all of his high school years and maybe a year after. And Jeff was a great guy. He passed away a couple of years ago from cancer, but we remember Jeff, and he was a super friend of mine. We were friends for more than 30 years. After I left Cardonas, we still remained friends. But it was funny. We always joked when we'd see each other that I kept harping on Jeff all the time that he worked for me, is that his hand was too heavy. I said, "You're putting too much cheese. You're putting too much pepperoni." And the one time that I wasn't looking was we were fortunate enough to have the secret shopper from the Argus who came and got a pizza, and Jeff happened to be the guy that made it. And it's funny because in this article, they talk about how much cheese was on the pizza, how much pepperoni was on the pizza. And I can remember to this day, I was actually looking at the article, and Jeff had put 31 pepperonis on a small pizza. And that was probably 50% more than we trained people to put on pizzas. But Jeff was always very generous that way. He made a rich pizza, and even though it cost me a lot over the years, it was the one time that it actually worked out in my favor. Exactly. Because we then became the #1 pizza in Livingston County thanks to Jeff. So I'll give that credit where it's due.
Yeah, honor his memory.
Yeah.
So when Cardonas got going, so basically it was just the food. You didn't have the liquor license.
Correct.
Did you have beer?
No.
Were you able to? Because sometimes you can have beer and wine.
No,
with,
we only
just a
had we only had soft drinks for the beginning years. I think we got the liquor license, and boy, Al Cardona, my partner, is going to be the one to have a better recollection of when we got the liquor license. I'm going to say it was around 1977, 78, 79 is when we obtained the liquor license from the place next door. But we had a very limited menu going in because we just basically served a lot of different types of pizza.
Right.
And then we had sub sandwiches and spaghetti and ravioli. That was pretty much the mainstay for what we did. It was designed as a carry-out pizza place, but when it opened, it was one of the few restaurants at that time that actually had an indoor dining room. Okay. Most of the restaurants that were built by the Dino's franchise were all takeout and delivery, and that was the main focus of the business model.
Okay.
But we were one of the few places that opened up what was at that time the largest indoor seating Dino's Pizza of its kind, and we were store number 58.
Okay.
Just as a tidbit of information,
Right.
we were the 58th store to open, and we were the largest one at that time.
Nice. Now, was the bar already there? Was there a bar built, or did you have to?
No,
Did you have to build that?
We took what was then a storage area behind the actual kitchen and turned it into the bar area,
Oh, okay.
which became, we called it back then the Oak Barrel Saloon. And we took wine barrels and whiskey barrels, cut them in half, stuck them on the wall, and created the Oak Barrel Saloon.
There you go.
And some of you are going to remember that. If you are old enough and got enough gray hair, you'll remember the Oak Barrel Saloon.
Very good. Now let's get to the bands that played here. I know we had covered some of the bands that have played here in the 70s and 80s. That really seemed to bring the people in big time, other than the food, which was awesome. But the bands just kind of sealed the deal, and you know, you couldn't get into this place on a Friday or Saturday night. You were waiting outside. There were lines, if you recall, back in the late 70s. It was always the place to go. There were other places, but Cardona's was always the number one spot to hit. And I remember the bands that played here. Wondering if any of those band members are still around today. What do you think, Carl?
Well, you know, for some of those guys, it was probably a hard life. I hope they're still around. I would not wish any ill on any of them.
Right.
But yeah, there was a lot of talent in our area. And I gotta say that we took chances with bands. We had bands come in, and they would audition, or they would send a demo tape, and we would listen to it, and then we'd decide whether we would hire them. And you know, it came down to a lot of things. It came down to price, and it came
Right.
down to you know, what we felt we could accommodate for their needs as well as ours, because the bar area and the band area was limited. So
Right.
a lot of these bands had a lot of equipment. We'd scale them down and say, oh no, you can't bring those huge speakers in,
Right.
because you know, you're going to blow people right out of the building. But we brought in a lot of talent that was new talent. A lot of talent came out of the Ann Arbor area. A lot of these little local bands that were doggone good. And
Oh, yeah.
you know, they came and they came to us, and it was a place where they could showcase and you know, show their talent. A lot of cover bands. A lot of these bands like to play their own original music, and like I said, some of them were really, really talented. And you know, to think of names of those bands, there's really only, for me, there's only two that I can recollect by name. And of course, one was Nucleus.
Right.
And the Nucleus band was kind of a mainstay around the Brighton area, because the guys were local here in Brighton. And then we had the country western duo of Steinkraus and Ritter. And Jim Steinkraus was around here for a long, long time. I hope he's still around. I do not know where he is. I haven't seen him in years.
Okay.
But a good guy. And Ritter, I'm trying to think of his first name, but Steinkraus and Ritter, they did country cover stuff, and they were always very popular and well received here too. We mixed it up a lot, and I think that had a lot to do with why Cardona's was what it was. Is you could see a lot of different types of entertainment, a lot of rock bands, folk
Right.
bands. We brought comedy in. Al was, you know, instrumental in mixing it up a lot.
Okay.
When he took over, he had a keen sense of bringing in a lot of different entertainment, and you know, we had comedians for a time, and it all seemed to work. It was still a family atmosphere. we had very few rowdy incidents. We had a couple, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, everybody was well behaved, and everybody seemed to have a good time. So.
Great. So a shout out to anybody that's watching this. If you know anybody that used to play at Cardona's, let us know. Write down on the comments that, hey, so and so, is still around in the Brighton area or is reachable on Facebook. The reason why, Carl and I have been discussing a Cardona reunion. We would like to have it here at Stouts, obviously, and bring back that atmosphere that we had in the 70s and 80s. Do the pizza, have a buffet, have some bands play, possibly maybe some acoustic music going on. But I have put stuff on Facebook on the Best of Brighton, kind of cluing you in on our ideas of having this, and it would be by ticket sales. And tell us what you think. I've had 17 or 18 people reply and say, yeah, count me in. And we would really like to know if this is something that you believe you'd like to attend in the next month or two. And it would be a great time. It'd be a lot of fun. So back to Cardona's days. Carl, what was your favorite time of the year in this place, working in Cardona's? What would be, was it Halloween? Was it Christmas? What was your favorite time?
Well, I'll tell you, early summer was, I think, my favorite time. And, for a couple of reasons. As soon as school would let out, somewhere the first or second week in June, we would get a large influx of customers that were repeat customers from the previous summer. Because believe it or not, folks, back then, Brighton was a summer tourist destination. Burroughs Farms,
Right.
Bishop Lake, which Burroughs Farms, of course, now Oak Point. Those areas, the Crooked Lakes, they were full of cottages. So many of those places were just simply summer cottages. And we would have people come out, even Woodland Lake. There weren't nearly the year-round homes back then on the lakes. So I would see people that I hadn't seen in 6-7 months, and they would circle back around, and the summer cottage folks would come, and we really had a good time with that large influx of all those folks who were always just the summer vacationers, and they were
Right.
all having a good time, and they would come in, and that was a great time.
So that'd be right around June or
June, I would say the second week in June through the 4th of July was just really a robust time here, and that went on for a good 10 years before Brighton, I guess I would say, kind of got discovered, and the lakes became, so many homes were built that replaced the summer cottages, permanent residents, and Brighton had a big growth spurt in the early 80s, where homes were being built. You go down Brighton Road today, and from Bauer Road,
Chilson.
all the way to Chilson, all of those subdivisions were built in the early, in the mid 70s to the mid 80s. So there's a huge growth spurt, and at that time, then people lived here year round. They were moving here, commuting to different locations wasn't as big a deal, and so it changed. It became more of a permanent residence location rather than just the summer vacationers.
Okay. So Halloween, I remember Halloween being a big event around here. Halloween, and I remember New Year's Eve parties that were packed, and you couldn't get in. I mean, it was a fun time, and you'd have the bands going and all kinds of special drinks. I'm sure people remember watermelon shots. I remember Al introducing me to Lemon Drop. Never had that before, and we sat down at a table and had us around the lemon drops, and we chugged it down like you're supposed to, and I thought, oh, nothing. That was nothing, Dale. Well, about a minute later, that lemon drop hit me.
Yeah.
And it was an experience.
Now there was kamikazes as well. Lemon drops, kamikazes, watermelon shots.
Right.
All of that stuff, still around today. I don't know, how many people are partaking. This crowd is, our crowd is probably more on the reserved alcohol consumption group now.
Yeah.
But back then, sure, we were growing up. We were all experimenting and enjoying the different mixologies.
Right. It was a different time, and to listen to Carl take us through that walk on memory lane. A lot of people on the site, Best of Brighton, mentioned, how they loved it here in the 70s and 80s, and everybody knew everybody, and it was a friendly town, which it still is. It's grown quite a bit. If you haven't been here in 20 years, it probably look pretty different. I mean, the streets don't change, obviously, but the businesses here and the growth that has taken place over the last 10 years has just been amazing, especially with hotels. I mean, hotels, the only motel that we all knew of was Smith's Hotel, and that was off of Grand River near Pleasant Valley. And nowadays, I don't know how many we have. I would maybe guess 10.
Yeah, it is amazing when you go to the periphery, you go to the outskirts, you go over by the new U of M hospital, there's a Hampton, there's a Holiday Inn, Sweet Express. Then you go out by Costco and there's a big hotel there.
Right.
There's a lot of them, yeah. It's pretty amazing how many have sprung up. And they don't build $5 million businesses without doing the research.
Right.
So the demand is there, and the city has grown. The population here is in excess. The surrounding area of Brighton alone, I believe it's in excess of 100,000 now.
Wow.
Which is phenomenal growth. And we'd like to still call it our town, and it will be mine forever.
Oh yeah.
I have no intentions of leaving this community. I love it here, and I've lived here now for 50 years. So I plan on making another 50. So
there you go.
We hope to see all you folks in our reunion whenever that does materialize.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it'll happen, and I think people that haven't been here since the Cardone days, they will be impressed in what they see. We got an open ceiling, which is pretty awesome, and the style, the setup of the bar is different. It's more spacious. And also they have a patio out in the back, which is nice.
Right.
So there's a lot more to it, but a lot of people will remember what Cardona was like back in the 70s and 80s, and what it felt like, what the atmosphere was like, what we were going through at those times, and the good things. The gas, it was cheap, food wasn't bad. Cars didn't cost that much. I remember looking at a brand new Camaro at Underwoods. I think most of you would remember Gary Underwoods, where they had cars for sale. One car in particular was one of my favorites, was a Camaro, and the list price on there was $6,700.
Yeah.
That was those were good days. Of course, we didn't make a lot of money back then, but still.
It seemed relatively more affordable. Just the world in general seemed like, you could afford to buy a new car.
Right.
And in many cases, people could afford to buy a house. It didn't have to be a new house, but, I remember buying my first home in Brighton. I think I paid $42,000 for it. I hate to think what that house costs today.
Yeah, you wouldn't get a garage for that cost right now. But
no.
A lot of good times that we've had, and we want to keep sharing them on the Best of Brighton. For now, this has been Table for Two with Carl Vagnetti and myself, Mike Tilt, wishing you a safe week.
Hi, I'm Mark Shea, and this is Body by Mark. Here we do a complete line of repairs, collision repairs, anything at all that happens in an accident, we can fix it. We also do restoration repairs, and there's not a lot of shops around here that do it. We're working on a 2009 Jeep Wrangler. It's a TJ, and we are replacing a frame rail, which is very common on these. If you need an estimate, I'll even come to your house and do it for you.